Iraq War. John Soltz is with Vote Vets, and Steve Russell is with Veterans for Freedom. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Steve Russell, what did you think about the president's plan?
Well, I think I'm glad to see that he's listening to Secretary Gates and certainly General Odierno and the commanders on the ground and making adjustments. I do think he has to be careful about setting a date and saying no more combat. We saw our previous commander-in-chief made such a claim, and that was problematic.
John Soltz, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think he brings up a point in a sense for President Obama to say August 10th or August 2010 there's going to be no more, quote, combat in Iraq based on, what we heard Jim Miklashevsky just report. It's hard to isolate our troops in combat inside of Iraq, but I do think that it was a great speech today because you heard the president for the first time in a long time talk about things other than troops. He talked about diplomacy. He talked about ending the war in Iraq. He talked about taking care of our veterans when they came home. He talked about a pay increase. So I think he basically ended the war today, but, I would caution that after August 2010, there could be some troops left in Iraq and there could be casualties, and I do think the real test will come if there's an uptick in violence, that he can't want to send more troops in, and he cannot renegotiate the SOFA agreement or he's going to lose his left in America.
Well, speaking about the speech, President Obama today tried to paint a realistic picture about Iraq. Gentlemen, let's take a look and a listen here.
But let there be no doubt, Iraq is not yet secure, and there will be difficult days ahead. Violence will continue to be a part of life in Iraq. Too many fundamental political questions about Iraq's future remain unresolved.
Steve Russell, Iraq is basically a violent country. Its history is violent, its present is violence, and would lead anyone to believe that it's going to continue to be violent in the days ahead. So going forward with the withdrawal plan as it is announced today, what do you anticipate might happen with regard to American troops on the ground up until the last moment they're there?
I think you'll continue to see them carrying out their missions. I had the privilege to be there just a few months ago and went out on patrols in the Rashid district of Baghdad with 3 different combat units. What I saw was a remarkable resilience of our troops to work with local Iraqis, to get out into the communities. We also interviewed a number of Iraqi soldiers and police, and the thing that I was struck by was how much Iraq is taking over its own security forces. We even went by a civilian car from Baghdad to Tikrit, a 160-mile trip one way, only saw 2 patrols. One was on the outskirts of Baghdad and the other was in the vicinity of Tikrit but not in the city. Everything else was patrolled by Iraqis, and it was quite safe. So I think you'll continue to see some cooperation with the training, with the supply and logistics, with intelligence and other things.
John Soltz, if someone asked you today, and I'm going to ask you right now, do you think we won the war in Iraq? Can you define win in Iraq? What do you think has happened there?
Well, I think that was what was great about the president's speech today is he gave the troops and the Marines and the soldiers and the airmen and the sailors all the credit in the world. He said, you guys did your job. You took out Saddam Hussein. You went in. You gave the Iraqis a chance. So, look, America was obviously never defeated on the battlefield in Iraq, not even close, never in one single battle. And I think what I really enjoyed about the president's speech today is he gave a tremendous amount of credit to the military, to their families, and he really showed, as a man who's never served, how he could reach out to the military community and the troops who fought there and really honored their sacrifice and their commitment to their mission, and admitted the problems and failures in Iraq had come at the political level. Many political problems that could still arise. I'm not quite sure we can write that page in history. There's still a lot of problems on the ground in Iraq our troops can't fix. Our troops can't figure out what's going to happen in Kirkuk. The Kurds have said they're going to fight for that ground, although it's a split city. Our troops on the ground cannot deal with what's going on with the Sunni oil law, whether or not the Sunnis are going to get a piece of the profit from all over the Shia and Kurd areas. So these are political problems, and his engagement with Iran and Syria and his engagement with the Iraqi government and understanding that that's the real issue here, I felt was an excellent message.
Well, you were just talking about the troops, and President Obama spoke about the troops today. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
You make up a fraction of the American population. But in an age when so many people and institutions have acted irresponsibly, so many of you did the opposite. You volunteered to bear the heaviest burden. You and your families have done your duty. Now, a grateful nation must do ours.
Steve Russell, there's the President of the United States speaking the truth about the troops and about many of the rest of us here at home. They did their duty, and a lot of us just sat back here and bought another barbecue grill for the backyard. But my question to you is, and maybe you'd have difficulty answering it, I don't know. Out there in the country, there are many families who have been fractured forever by the loss of a loved one in Iraq. Do you think it's been worth it?
I think it's always worth it when we defend freedom. We have to remember that this isn't just about abandoning Iraq that we view as an enemy and leaving. It's about looking at Iraq as an ally and continuing to sustain them. I lost soldiers in Iraq. I've lost friends. I've had to bury a couple at Arlington National Cemetery. But I think what you see is what speaks to a greater thing, that the President said that our soldiers have acted responsibly. It's time that politicians now act responsibly. The President has listened to Secretary Gates. He's listened to commanders on the ground. He's made adjustments because he sees the need to continue to have strong forces until the elections at the end of December. Now I hope that politicians on both sides of the aisle will not abandon our troops, will listen to those ground commanders, and give the President the leeway to make sure that we win in Iraq and that we come home with success.
Steve Russell, John Soltz, thank you both for your service, and thanks for joining us tonight. Coming up.